Hey, you guys. We've been missing you. We've been watching church online, and I'm sure you have too. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to have Miss Kathy do a little activity that we usually do in our class. So she's going to throw the blocks, and then you have to follow what she does.
Okay, you ready? See if you can do it at home. Twist your foot. Twist your foot. Good job. Bounce your elbow.
You almost look like a chicken.
Yeah.
That's your elbow. All right, one more time.
All right, let's try one more. Bounce your leg. Good job.
Thank you,
Yay.
Diana. Go on out.
We've been talking about Paul. God used Paul to share the gospel and help teach others about other Christians. Paul was a missionary, and a missionary is a person who tells other people about God and Jesus. They share the gospel with other people.
So like Miss Kathy said, we were talking about Paul. We've been talking about Paul all through May. So a couple of the lessons are when Paul and Barnabas became missionaries and when Paul taught in Athens. We're also going to be talking about when Paul taught Peter. So Paul went to Jerusalem. Barnabas and Titus, they went with him, and Paul talked to the leaders in the church. And they had to understand that he had a calling from God to teach the gospel to Gentiles. So you're talking here about two different people, the Gentiles and the Jews. They're two different people groups, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. The leaders recognized that God wanted Paul to share the good news about Jesus to the Gentiles, just like God wanted Peter to tell the good news to the Jewish people. They both had different jobs. One was to teach the Gentiles, and one was to teach the Jews, but one job, to teach the gospel. The leaders asked Paul to teach the Gentiles how to follow Jesus, and especially how to care for the poor people. And Paul agreed that was important. Later, Peter came to Antioch to see Paul. Paul noticed that Peter was acting strange. He stopped eating with the Gentiles. Peter regularly ate with the Gentiles before, but all of a sudden he changed. Some of the Jewish people came to Peter and said they didn't want him eating with the Jewish Christians. He was afraid what they would think. So more Jewish Christians began to stay away from the Gentile Christians. Even Barnabas stopped eating with the Gentiles. Remember, Gentiles and Jews. Paul stood up in front of everyone and told Peter, "It's not right. You should not have stopped eating with the Gentile Christians. The gospel is for everyone, both Gentiles and Jews." Paul reminded him that people are made right with God because of what Jesus did, not because of what we do. Paul told Peter that the people who follow Jesus make different decisions as a result of their relationship with God. It should change us. Paul reminded Peter that Jesus lives inside his people. As a result, people who love Jesus, they ought to love other people regardless of their race or their background. Paul stated that we have to live by faith in God, not to please other people. So that's found in Galatians 2. And so I want to ask you a couple questions. Here's a couple simple ones. Who preached the gospel to the Jewish people? Peter. Who taught the gospel to the Gentiles? Paul. So I have a tricky question for you. It's a true or false. Peter stopped eating with the Gentiles because he was afraid of what other Jewish people would think. True or false? Did Peter stop eating because he was afraid of what the Jewish people would think? That's true. What about one more? True or false? Peter taught Paul the right way to live as a Christian. True or false? Peter taught Paul how to live as a Christian. That's false, because Paul was the teacher here. So what I wanted to talk to you about is Jews and Gentiles. It's kind of, it goes back all the way to where the Jewish people came from. You have Adam and Eve. So those are the first people. God created the first people, Adam and Eve. Those were in a part of the land, but they were called Jewish. You've also heard the word Israelites, okay? So those are the people, God's chosen people, the Jews. The broader word, Israelites. That's who you have here, the first man or woman. Then you carry through the Bible, and I'm sure you've heard about the flood and the Tower of Babel. These were when people were sinning against God, and he had to deal with it. So when the Tower of Babel, he had them stop building, he spread them out all across the land. He had them travel. They spoke different languages. They went to different places in the world. That's where you get the Gentile people. When the people who were not Jewish, they started speaking other languages and they started going to different parts of the land, there's your Gentiles. So the Israelites were a smaller population of people. They were the ones that God chose to start the world with. But that's your Jews and that's your Gentiles. But guess what? God gives us a command, doesn't matter Jew or Gentile, but to share the gospel with South America, North America, Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia. You kind of get a piece of all those people in America. You've seen people with every color skin speaking different languages. That's who the gospel's for. Doesn't matter what color of your skin, doesn't matter what language you teach. The gospel is for all. And that's what Paul wanted Peter to understand. So I have an activity for you guys that's in your bag. And you should have gotten a picture of a head. Yours is blank, because this one's mine, and here's Miss Kathy's. What we did, we want you to draw a picture of yourself, your face. You can use a mirror, whatever you need, and I want you to draw a picture of you. And you know why? It says at the bottom, we tell that God sent his son for all the world. It's our job to be a missionary. Paul taught us so much in the New Testament of what God wanted us to know, but it's our job right now to go tell the gospel. There's one more thing that you're going to find in your packet that you're going to have fun. We have a bingo board, and it's some different things that you can do as a Christian. Some things are like go to church, listen to your teacher, help your parents. You're going to have a board, and you're going to have your little markers, okay? And then your parents are going to have the directions. So we would love to see you play this bingo with your family. The other thing I want you to do before I leave, once you get your picture, I would love for your mom or dad to take a picture of it and put it on our Facebook page so that we can all share our pictures and then we can tell other people about Jesus. Okay, Miss Kathy, I think that's it.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week.